What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato holding it down in the DraftKings studios in Boston. We got a great show for everyone coming up. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, right here on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. You can also catch the best of GoJo and Golic wherever you hear VSiN on the radio from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. Claudia, what do we got coming up today?
We have a lot to discuss, lots of controversy as well, which I know this one senior is going to have a lot to say about. The hip drop is dropped. The owners had a unanimous vote to drop the hip drop tackle. McCarthy moving up, Michigan quarterback climbing on the draft boards. We'll talk about how those odds have been affected over at the DraftKings Sportsbook. And Best Beefs, Charlotte Wilder on current sports feuds. She's going to talk a little bit about her 35th yesterday. Excited to do that, catch up with her. But first, guys, we have to talk about Shohei Ohtani, because he had his press conference yesterday, which I think had a lot more detail, was a bit more lengthy than we all expected it to be. He was there, of course, with his new interpreter, with his old one being fired about 5 days ago from the Dodgers. After this whole scandal began, over $4 million found to be wire transferred from Shohei's account to an illegal bookmaker in Southern California. So again, going back to this press conference, it was 12 minutes long. He said a lot. Here's one of the most important clips we found from it.
僕自身は、So I never bet on baseball or any other sports, or never have asked somebody to do it on my behalf, and I have never went through a bookmaker to bet on sports. Just to kind of just go over the result, in conclusion, Ipe has been stealing money from my account and has told lies.
So that was the basis of it. Like I said, it was 12 minutes long, but he kept repeating that. He's like, bottom line, it wasn't me. I've never been involved in gambling myself. I've never bet on anything baseball. But the one question we all had and still have, Gojo, is how did he get access to Shohei Ohtani's bank account?
Yeah, and I think, guys, as we go forward with this, like, obviously we want to be forthcoming. We work here for DraftKings. We work for a gambling outfit, and so all this is incredibly sensitive and stuff that we take very seriously, that DraftKings takes very seriously, and in looking at this, Dad, is something I don't know if we'll ever really have the answer to a lot of that. Like, the one thing that became very clear about this situation with Shohei yesterday is they are now, after losing brief control of the way that this looked publicly, when his interpreter, former interpreter now, went to ESPN, gave all of these statements, gave conflicting statements that started all of these questions that mounted in the public. Now they are going to control this. There was one camera allowed in there that broadcast to the MLB network and the local Dodger station here. No other cameras were allowed in that building. He had his new interpreter there. There were no questions taken. And when it was over, it was over. And now I really do wonder, even as Major League Baseball begins its investigation of this entire ordeal, although they've made it clear Shohei Ohtani himself is not under investigation, I wonder how much they're going to be able to find now that the clear strategy from yesterday in Shohei's camp was deny, deny, deny. We had no idea. We were taken advantage of by this person that Shohei had known since he was 18, a person who was 10 years his senior and who had been there with him along the way for every step of this journey. And it seems like now, after that bit of volatility at the beginning, they are going all in on this version of their story. And that's just it. It's a version, and we're not really sure what to make of it.
Listen, it would still be a headline had we just had this version. But the thing that raised everybody's eyebrows was the first story that came out, right? That Shohei knew about it, that Shohei wired the money, that Shohei wouldn't give his interpreter the money because he feared he was going to gamble the money away. So he wired the money. And there are different things in this where you can say it's a he said, or factual. And it seems pretty factual that the money came from Shohei's account, and Shohei's reason is he stole from me. He got into my account, and just as Claudia said, we have no idea how that happened, and I don't think this was going to be a presser that was going to get more than headlines. I didn't think it was going to dive in for any details, right? And that's what we got. It was a 12-minute press conference, and the reason it was 12 minutes because Shohei would talk, then the interpreter would talk. Other than that, would have been a lot shorter. So this was just getting the headlines out, and which certainly refuted that first story that we had heard. It's basically, as I confess, he did it, right? Is it's on him. He did it, had no idea he did it, had no idea he was doing this, had no idea how he got my money. And so it's already out there that it came from Shohei's account, but he's saying it was stolen. So where's the next story going to come from? Where is the next investor? Who's going to be talked to? As we know, there's an investigation on the bookie and on the interpreter. Are they going to start talking? Are we going to hear from them? Are we going to hear a different story from them that's going to be more than he said that can be backed up by facts? So I think that's kind of the next thing that we're waiting for. But until then, life's going to go on for Shohei and the Dodgers. He's going to play. He's not being removed from baseball. So the season will start. It's already started, but we know it starts tomorrow and then in full on Thursday. And he'll be playing until or unless some other information comes out where baseball has to put the brakes on it and say, all right, hold on, we need to look further into this.
Yeah, and I don't see how baseball's incentivized to do that at this point. Like, that's what I keep coming back to, is if you're Shohei's camp and if you're Major League Baseball, whose cash cow's been implicated in all of this in a way that's already got to make you feel uncomfortable, you as a sport and Rob Manfred as a commissioner are not incentivized to do anything other than make sure this goes away as quickly as possible for all of the integrity of the game reasons that normally come up, but certainly also for your financial bottom line that wants to see this once-in-a-generation $700 million a year player actually get to make it to his first game before things go off the rails.
Yeah, I agree that baseball will have no incentive to look into it. I guess my point is, if this investigation is continuing with the interpreter and with Matthew Boyer, the bookmaker, and it gets to a point where they start talking and they give stories that are different than what Shohei said in his press conference, then I think baseball doesn't want to have any reason to go back into this thing. They have want to separate Shohei from his interpreter, two guys that have been together forever, and just say, this has nothing to do with Shohei or the Dodgers or baseball. This was one rogue guy with an illegal bookmaker. They did their thing, and our baseball guy got stolen from. So until if more information comes out from those two that are involved, or anybody else saying, wait, I have proof that Shohei and this bookmaker knew one another, or we have proof that Shohei was the one who wired this money. You're right. Baseball is not going to dive into this thing at all. They're going to wait. They're going to wait and be reactive to any information that may come out, or all the information may have come out, and this may be it.
Yeah, and we already have like a lot of information, at least given from that story. And again, this is the problem, is now we've been told so much of what we heard early on was a lie. But remember, there was even the report as it concerns the bookmaker Boyer, that he allowed people to believe that Shohei Ohtani was a client of his because he said it was good for business to see that name coming in on the wire transfer here, which goes back to, hey, how did this person have access to Shohei's account if this is the claim? And it was Ben Lindbergh over at The Ringer who wrote a piece breaking down some of this and did say, while it's something that's foreign to most of us, it might not be out of the realm, considering that Ippei met Shohei when Shohei was an 18-year-old coming up in baseball. Ippei was 10 years older than him. He was someone he trusted and confided in. And so this idea that he would outsource that to somebody else or have access to somebody else for any number of reasons isn't totally far-fetched, even if, and again, presented with the noise that we got at the beginning of this, all of a sudden, all of this becomes colored with a ton of doubt that, again, now I will be interested to see the strategy for Major League Baseball after this, because, again, I don't know what they're going to do if and when Shohei Ohtani is in normal media availability again, how this is going to be handled at some point during the year when he's talking in front of reporters in a way that's not this controlled. The next time Rob Manfred has to speak publicly about this, what any of the action's going to look like from them, Dad, or if it's just silence from here on out, if it's just, hey, we have an ongoing investigation, things that you can normally punt down the line to until you've got a definitive enough result to come out and give whatever they decide their version of the story is in the meantime, until people start actually getting put under oath to get, if it goes that far for Boyer and Ippei and the other portions of this process.
I don't think there's any doubt that's the road it's going to go down. There's an ongoing investigation. There's an open investigation. There's however they want to word it, and we're not talking about it. And I think that's how it's going to go. I think it'll be short and sweet. I do think Shohei will be asked. That's what reporters are going to do, and I understand that. And that's what I think that's the stock answer that we're going to get. And certainly from the player side, I get it. and from baseball side, I get it. They don't want they want this thing to end. They want it to die in the vine from the baseball side of it, and wherever it's going to go on the legal side of it with the interpreter and with the bookmaker and wherever it goes, baseball is saying, okay, go ahead and go, but we don't want it touching our game anymore. It's already gotten close enough. So yes, I do think that's exactly what we're going to get. It's an ongoing investigation. So we've said all we're going to say. We're moving on.
Yeah, and so this one becomes sort of difficult to wrap our arms around here now, other than the fact that I think Major League Baseball is going to do everything in their power to make this go away as quickly as humanly possible, given all of the ramifications involved if you were somehow connected to betting on Major League Baseball in any way, shape, or form. And the ability to measure and know a lot of specifics about this case is kind of an interesting tie-in, Claudia, to the other story related to sports gambling that's going on right now in the NBA with Jonte Porter, who's now under investigation by the NBA after some betting irregularities popped up around games that he was involved in that all of a sudden have a very different tone to them as well.
Yeah, a few shops saw a irregular betting pattern, which they're talking about on a certain player and a certain position. So there was a lot of under money on a few of his props, and we're talking 5.5 points here. This happened on January 26th and March 20th. And then in those games, after the increased betting interest, he came out of the games after about 5 minutes with a re-aggravated eye injury and an illness. So, of course, if the money's coming in and he only plays 5 minutes, there's going to be an investigation started, which is what happening. NBA spokesman told ESPN the league is looking into it. So I'm sure this is hyper-focused right now, and I know that baseball is a separate sport, but when you have one of your major players under, not investigation, but in a situation with an investigation, then everything else is going to be hyper-focused. So yes, Jonte Porter, maybe we haven't really discussed him before, but this is a major issue which may lead into other issues that pop up. Senior, you've been in sports a while. What are sort of your thoughts around this? It's going to be tough to regulate gambling, but I know that we may see more of this pop up soon.
Well, actually, in this case, if you look at it, legalized gambling regulates to be able to find this now. If all gambling was still illegal, the only way we would know about this if there was, friends saying something or a bookie saying something. You go back to way back when in college to the ASU gambling situation that went on and talking because everything was under the table. And now and what I did not know each team had a person that kind of regulates or looks at gambling that goes on for, around their team, that bets that are made on their team. I did not know that. And that's a great thing to have. So you can find irregularities like this to bet the under on all those things and have all of them hit because you leave with an eye injury. So I think in this case, because gambling is legal, you're able to find patterns like this and see things like this. And I'll this has been going on as almost like NIL with gambling. NIL has all been, before it was NIL, called officially NIL, there were bags of money given out under the table, which happened in a lot of places, right? And now it's legal to put on top. It's like, illegal gambling was things you did behind closed doors, that everybody knew went on, but that was it. It was behind closed doors. Now it's legal, so it's out there on top of the table again. So you could actually find out more trends and things by looking at the information, and you can find out something like this that that causes a red flag to come up. And this is exactly what you want to happen if somebody within your sport is gambling on them or on their sport, is you want those red flags to come up in a legalized gambling situation so you could see.
Yeah, I mean, we'll deal in hypotheticals right now since we know Jonte Porter is under investigation. Nothing's been proven yet, but we certainly understand how this looks. Worth noting, DraftKings released a statement since their name was heavily featured in this article and said, "We have no comment on this story. In general, it's important to note that one of the many benefits of legal and regulated sports betting is that sports betting operators identify and report suspicious activity, and the integrity of the sport is therefore protected in a manner that doesn't exist in the illegal market." So, and I think that's worth noting, right, is while obviously there's a money-making component to this, and listen, based on that statement, we don't speak for DraftKings. We speak for us. We work with DraftKings. Nope. It's phenomenal. We don't speak for DraftKings. And so what I'd say is that is the one thing. Both sides here are very much incentivized to make sure the integrity of the game is at the core of all this, because obviously the sports products suffer if you have fans believing the outcomes are rigged. We've seen the jokes that have come from that in recent years, but all of a sudden, if that's something that's actually increased doubt amongst the people that's watching, that doesn't work. And the same goes for bookmakers. The same goes for these sports books across the country now that are legalized and do have the ability to make money in a way that's legal and regulated. Their product suffers if you've got this doubt in what's going on and this idea that any part of it could be in any way, shape, or form rigged. And so, Dad, the interesting part to me becomes this sort of chicken or egg debate that's going to happen right now, because you've got a lot of people honing in on sports gambling and these headlines that have popped up in rapid succession. And remember, we had JB Bickerstaff the other week that came out and talked about, in his opinion as a coach, what the effect sports gambling had on the way players are treated. You had Therese Halliburton come out and say that he felt like a prop and that he was only as good as that to fans that were watching the game. Like, there's a sensitivity to it right now because it is new. I do think that's a reality, that any previously stigmatized area that all of a sudden becomes legal is going to go through a page where, because it's so new, it's hyper-focused and it's hyper-inundated around everybody, and it's partially unavoidable. But now I do wonder, to your point, is it a chicken or egg thing of, hey, this stuff's always been going on and now we just have more tools to find it? Or has it been a signal where, because it is now more present, there are more opportunities for this to happen? We've seen it across all sports where guys have gotten dinged. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it in college sports in recent years, in the state of Iowa with everything that went on with those teams. But I think overall, as we're getting used to this new playground that we're all in right now, and as we're getting used to all the new things available here, these kinds of stories, and unfortunately, if these allegations are true, players like Jontay Porter have to be punished severely, because these are the kinds of things that, again, crack the foundation that everybody's standing on if they're true, and that I will never be able to fully understand from a player's perspective how, especially for a guy like Jontay Porter in this example, you've been working for the last couple years to get back into the NBA and could potentially throw away your last best shot on something like this. Seems mind-numbing to me.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree. And that's why we see in the NFL, we've had a couple of players have to miss the entire year, on gambling, and we see the rules involved there. What Tyrese Halliburton said, Mike, is because it's, I'll keep using this term, it's on top of the table right now. You don't think players back in my era were the big-time players that had big-time impact on the game weren't in that same area of being gambled on illegally, right, to do things? So now it's just, we get to see it. Now it's legal. So Tyrese is saying, it's like in another way, for the fantasy football players say, or players saying, God, I don't care about the fantasy football. I know, but if I don't get that extra carry, that extra yard for you, sorry. It's because it's out there now, and we see it. And some guys, jump on it and enjoy it. But this is all because it's legal now. Now, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I got to believe before legalized gambling, it was already, we know, $1 billion illegal business. Now it's $1 billion times X legal business. It's more because more people will do it because it's legal. So it's going to be still in the billions of dollars, and it's legal now. So like NIL, like the transfer portal, this is where we are right now. So the best thing you can do, or one of the best things you can do, is make sure you have a monitoring system, because you're talking about a lot of players who are human. And as we've seen, someone's going to try it. Someone is, just like people tried it and did it when it was illegal, they're going to try it when it's legal. So what kind of systems do you have in place? What kind of monitoring you have in place to catch when you see a trend going, or to catch someone in that situation, or to make very harsh rules like they do in the NFL? If you want to bet on another sport, you can't do it in the facility. You can't do it on a bus, the team plane, the team hotel. You have to do it away, which seems like very easy rules to follow, quite honestly, to not do it there. So to get busted in that and lose a year blows my mind. So not heard the end of this, that's for sure.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. The hip drop tackle will be banned moving forward in the NFL. Adam Schefter tweeted, now unanimously banned against the objections of the NFLPA. And of course, the players were very vocal about this after it came out. We're going to show you a few tweets now. If you just type it in on Twitter, you'll see them all. JJ Watt, one of them, he goes, just fast forward to the belts with the flags on them, because that's basically the direction we're heading in. Breaking news, tackling banned. I mean, Cam Jordan just does a bunch of throwing up faces. Senior, we've been talking about this. We sort of knew that this was coming. I didn't know it was going to be unanimous, but of course the players are upset. You would know, being on this side of the ball, how you're supposed to tackle now.
You know, and it's not just this one thing, Claudia. It's a number of things over the years that just continue to provide more for the offense. And while I don't like this, I understand you trying to get injury out of the game. We went through this when we were stopping the hits to the head and the launching, and we did all that we did there to try and stop injuries in the game. So there are times I do understand that. I thought that went overboard a little bit. I think some of the rules are still overboard when they get called, like landing on the quarterback, when guys are actually trying not to and they still get flagged for it. Not only get flagged, they get fined. And in this case, in this rule, you can get fined as well. This is another rule, by the way, that if it's not flagged in the game, you can get a letter that next week that says, we know it wasn't flagged in the game, but you did a swivel hip drop tackle, so here's a $10,000 fine as well, even though you didn't get a flag in a game, which is always another bright spot for a defender's day when they get one of those. So to me, it's just a culmination of continued things done to help the offense, to do more for the offense, to make it more of an offensive game. So yeah, initially as a former defensive player, I'm not happy about it. But I do understand last year there were 230 instances of these tackles, and 15 resulted in a player missing time because of the injury. And that's what you look at. Percentage of times things happen, percentage of injuries. That's just like what we've done with the kickoff return forever. Now it's going to change again. So it's a threshold that the NFL feels they need to drop. So you understand it from that side, but just, Mike, it's just tough as a former defensive guy when things happen as fast as they do, when guys are running as big and as fast as they are in this day, and you don't have the proper angle, and stop it before anybody tweets in, we'll get the proper angle, just stop it. You know, when the game moves 1,000 miles an hour, when you got to reach for a guy, try anything to get a guy down and stop his momentum, that's why you're dropping the hip. Is you're trying to stop his momentum from going forward, and certainly at times you're falling right on his legs. It happened in my era. It's happening now, and you'll see the injury. So am I happy about it? No. Do I understand from the league side where the league is going and what they want? Yes, they want the offense. Mainly, they're again going to disguise this around, and it certainly does have something to do with the health and welfare of a player, because it has hurt some players, as we've seen. But, I mean, that's what defensive players see, Mike, is just another thing taken away from our arsenal to stop an offensive play.
Yeah, my sports radio take is that this is hip drop tackling too hard to define and going to be way too difficult to enforce in a way that's consistent or visually pleasing to the fans. The beginning of the season is going to be a nightmare. Preseason and the first quarter of the year are going to be a flag-infested hell. I know Troy Vincent said this is mostly going to be a fine thing, but what do we see every year with points of emphasis? They're flagged into oblivion in a way that really obscures the product early in the season to send a point. So prepare yourselves for a really crappy first quarter of the season. But my kind of more nuanced take is this also is a thing like where unfortunately defenders are their own worst enemy here because they've been so adaptive. Because they've always found a way, being some of the best athletes on the planet, to adjust to the new things that are thrown in their lap. And so because of that, this is going to be a thing for a little while, and then it's going to go away. It's a thing that you mentioned, like 230 times sounds like a lot until you consider that in a given season, there's like 35,000 plays that happen in an NFL season. This is going to happen such a few amount of times, and the only place the NFL gets in trouble now, Dad, because what prompted this, quite honestly, congrats to Mark Andrews for having the juice. He was the high-profile enough case of this for people to all of a sudden start looking at this. Now it's going to be if this penalty pops up and it is actually flagged in a pivotal moment in a playoff game. That's what people are going to be looking for, where all of a sudden this rule sways the outcome of a game. That's the nightmare scenario now for the NFL.
You are so right, because we've already seen it with the ridiculous don't land on the quarterback when you actually see defenders putting their arms out and still getting flagged. And on a third down when you're off the field, now it's 1st and 10. It's a joke. That's the thing, too. We're putting more on the officials, even more on the officials to look for, because the definition of this, so for anybody out there, this is what you need to look for. If a defender grabs the runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both arms and also unweighs himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and or lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's legs at or below the knee. That's what the officials are looking for in a split second. Now, they are pretty apparent. When you see it's kind of like the horse collar tackle. You can kind of see it. You can see it pretty evidently, and you can usually see these as well. But it has to meet those two criteria. There's got to be both hands or both arms on the ball carrier, and you have to drop your weight onto his legs. So in real time, that's what they're trying to decide. And you are so right, is there's going to be so many flags in preseason. So many flags, and you're right. The players are going to have to adapt, just like they have adapted over the years, especially when you took some of the hitting that you've taken away in the secondary and some of the hitting you've taken on the quarterback. Players have to adapt, and they are adapting. Now, this is one more thing they have to adapt to.
I was going to say, they have adapted. Like, what did we spend a lion's share of this last season talking about? The incredible defenses around the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, all these other units that had found ways to harass the quarterbacks and get games to look differently and sway the outcome, so much so that we were talking about that as a factor much more in an offensive league than we had in a while, because the quality of these space alien athletes on that side of the ball and their ability to adjust to the different target zones that have now popped up as a result of the head injuries there and the different ways that you've got to tackle and hit the quarterback now based on the rules to protect them in the pocket. They've all found a way. Myles Garrett was still extremely effective this year. Micah Parsons still got after the quarterback this season. The Baltimore Ravens were a Death Star all the way up until they weren't in the postseason when they stopped running the football. That all happens. These are like iPhone updates where a lot of the features we don't like right away, and then you get so used to it, you never remember life without it. And everybody who comes up now after that, where that's their first exposure, only knows something else. I think I saw Nate Tice over at The Athletic talking about how some of the rule changes have actually netted us some of the best cornerback play we've seen in a long time, because, and I've heard Dominique Foxworth mentioned this, you've got a generation of corners that don't know anything but these rules now. And so they've come up in them so well and are so gifted athletically that now they're doing things that some of their predecessors probably couldn't have even dreamed of. And that's going to be true across the board largely, Dad. I will go back to 230 instances of this happening. That means there were 30,000+ other tackles that happened on any given play that didn't involve this. So there's still ways to get guys down.
And it's just amazing, the committee chairman for this competition, Rich McKay, tries to clarify this. He's like, it's not eliminating the hip drop tackle, only the swivel technique. You can still tackle a guy from behind and land on his legs. So you just can't have two hands on him or two arms around him or drop your weight onto his legs. Yeah, what the officials have to watch in this split second. I mean, Rich McKay explains it this is a simple thing. Come on, they can easily adjust to this. Give me a break. I mean, but it's not going to change. We know that. And players will have to adapt, just like they did to the 20-second pitch clock in baseball and the different rules you change in any sport. It's not going the other way. Sometimes you do a 1-year trial on things, and then you decide after that. But if a rule is changed, players, they have no choice but to adapt. So to sit there and say, players can adapt. Yeah, they can adapt, but because they have no choice. And they're good enough athletes to be able to adapt to this. But, man, don't explain this thing like, we're just taking this little itty-bitty thing out. They can still do this. They just can't do this little part of it that we have to catch in a split second. And then we'll fine their asses for it as well.
I was just going to say, if you've paid attention to the massive jump in NFL fines over the last couple of years related to some of the running back strikes and the different hits with the head recently, this is not going to be just some small sliver of it. They're going to take every chance they can get early on to lighten these guys' wallets, because that's how they communicate.
back here on GoJo and Golic with some insanity out of Jerry's world. Dallas Cowboys owner says that they don't have money to keep players that they need. What? Jerry Jones says this after their longest tenured player, one of them an offensive tackle, Tyron Smith, left for the New York Jets. He stayed with them for 13 seasons after being drafted in 2011. And when Jones was asked about it, he said, we couldn't afford to keep him and chance him hitting the incentives in the Jets deal. Then people found a picture of him with a notepad that had 2-year-old scribbles on it. And apparently this is his way of showing how he's going to go all in, emphasizing his point by just scribbling a bunch of lines and dots together. I don't know. I can never really explain this man. Can you go, Joe?
No, the doodles, just an incredibly flawless touch there. As a person who's a serial doodler, I deeply empathize with Jerry Jones. You just love having the pen in your hand for the fixation. You need something to hold. Anyone who's been on TV, quite frankly, can empathize with that situation. And you just sort of start absent-mindedly going along with whatever you're saying. So I get that as a hand talker and a doodler here. Dad, what I don't get is Jerry Jones willingly turning himself into a meme, because the Cowboys all-in mantra from the Combine that has now since been anything but, as this offseason they have only signed one outside free agents to their team, and linebacker Eric Kendricks, who hardly seems like a massive spend here, along with re-signing Jordan Lewis and their long snapper, does not reek of a team that actually is all in on this year's roster, Dad. So what'd you take away from this?
Well, first off, I took away when he had the notebook or the pad of paper there. I thought of Coach Klein from Waterboy. And Adam Sandler, why do you carry around that notebook, Coach Klein? Claudia, please. You've seen Waterboy.
I've seen clips of it. I haven't seen the whole thing.
All right, we're done. Nope,
Again,
we're done. Okay, I'm going to keep talking now.
We're going to keep running into this because Claudia is young.
I am.
And because these Adam Sandler, the Happy Madison movies
I'm
largely missed her
27.
generation.
Thanks, GoJo.
Listen, I've seen movies that weren't in my generation, that were in the generation before me. They're out there still to see. It's not like you have to see them right at that particular time.
I've seen
Charlie
The Bird.
Chaplin in the gang?
That's an old movie.
All right.
Have you
We
heard the
absolutely
news?
Done. All right. As far as Jerry Jones, listen, and everybody's going to certainly jump on him. His choice of words, we can't afford that. Let's understand. In saying can't afford it, it's not like they can't afford to pay it, okay? Nobody's going to feel bad for a billionaire talking about that. This is about cap space. This is about managing the money, which is on them. Look directly in the mirror. If you haven't managed your cap correctly, or your numbers correctly, or your players correctly, and incentives and deals, that it's going to work for you. That's on you. But to sit there, and use that terminology for, by the way, their organization, the Dallas Cowboys, is the highest valued in all sports at $9 billion. So I understand why he's getting laughed at for that choice of words or that term, but that's what he means. When he talks about we can't afford Tyron Smith if he hits those incentives, this is a lot of, again, it's about cap and managing the cap money, not that he has to scrape his nickels together from the couch to try and pay somebody.
No, and the reasons he's bringing this up are the contracts that everybody knows are coming down the line. We've known for a while Micah Parsons was going to end up being the highest paid non-quarterback of all time. We've known for a while CeeDee Lamb was going to command top of the market wide receiver money. The Cowboys knew that better than anybody else. This all goes back to, in my mind, Dad, the way they mismanaged the Dak Prescott signing of his first contract way back when they dragged their feet on it and they signed every other player on that roster but their quarterback, and set the timeline back for this now, because now Dak Prescott, who counts something like $55 million against the cap this year, close to $60 million against the cap this year, because they haven't come to any sort of long-term extension. And even if he plays for a different team next year upon the expiration of this deal, because it's got void years tagged on it and all that stuff, he's going to count $40 million against the cap next year, no matter who he plays for. And so the Cowboys, who have the clear and obvious way forward here of, hey, if you just extend Dak Prescott, spread this money money out differently, it probably gives you a better chance of signing these guys in a way that makes more sense and allows your team to compete now, which brings us to the real point at the core of this, Dad, which is Jerry Jones only believes in Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy so much, and it's why both are walking into 2024 with this huge weight around their necks, knowing full well that their jobs depend on the performance of this season, and if not, this Cowboys outfit's going to look very different next year, no matter how much it costs them.
Yeah, and again, this is standard practice now. When you sign one of the deals, well, first, you're right. How they picked other players before they signed Dak was ridiculous. And then once you decided to sign Dak, you know exactly what you're in for. You know it will never reach the end of the contract because you're not going to want to take a $59 million cap hit for one season. You know where the dead money is, so you know exactly the position you're in. If you make a more of a team-friendly deal, the Patrick Mahomes deal, where you keep redoing or restructuring that deal, but you also have a great quarterback. But here, you sign the deal, and now you're not sure about Dak, so you've put yourself in a box. Do we extend it to where then we help ourselves this year, but then does that solve our problem if we don't think he's going to be our quarterback next year or the year down the road? This is all self-inflicted, right? Because once you sign that deal, you know this, Mike, once you sign that deal, you know exactly the ramifications, whether it's 2, whether it's 3, whether it's 4 years down the road, on what's going to have to be done because of that deal that you signed, and that's where they are right now. And to restructure what they did to save the $5 million instead of restructuring this whole thing, give the extension to really drop the amount, you're right. That's an obvious sign that they're like, we don't know if Dak's going to be our guy next year, and we know it's still going to cost us money. So, we've seen other teams do it. We've seen dead money hits of $40, $50 million, and it's not going to be the last time we see that.
Oh, I mean, we're coming off an offseason right now where the Denver Broncos literally told Russell Wilson to go away to pay larger than the 2 previous highest dead cap hits combined to that quarterback. So, yeah, we're in a different day and age. We've talked about it. And wilder swings and misses are certainly possible. But, Dad, it's so interesting because coming off last year with the evaluation of Dak Prescott, we can admit we're in a bit of a different place where Dak Prescott played MVP caliber football for the first half, maybe 3/4 of that season before the wheels kind of fell off late post that Buffalo Bills outing at Orchard Park. And now coming off that, I think a lot of people look at Dak Prescott and say, even his most ardent defenders, this guy is probably more in line with Kirk Cousins than he is with that upper tier of quarterbacks in the NFL, where you can count on him and him alone to go out and win you the game here. He did great within that system. That's the irony is him and Mike McCarthy at different junctures of last season probably had some of their best contributions to ball since McCarthy was the play caller for the first time in a while, now that Kellen Moore had gone. But clearly we understand, hey, you're not getting Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, that group of quarterback with Dak Prescott, but you've put yourself in this bind financially where I don't know how much better you do if you jettison Dak Prescott next year, knowing the options that are currently on the table.
That's it, right? We've always heard that, well, this guy isn't getting it done for us. Then it was always, what's your option? Okay, where are you going to go? Are you looking ahead at what quarterbacks will be free agents, who you want to trade for? Obviously, you'd have to give up assets. What the rookie quarterback situation is going to look like. This is where you have to be thinking 1, 2, 3 years ahead to your situation on what you want to do. And I don't know what they want to do. At times, they're not. It doesn't seem like they're sure. But yeah, to hear the line. But honestly, Mike, we hear this line every year from Jerry Jones. We're all in. We're all in. And it just sounds odd to say, yeah, but we can't afford this or we can't afford that. It gets to be very, very interesting on where it goes. But still, that's the biggest thing to me is you knew where you were going to be in this deal with Dak. You took a long time to sign Dak. Now you're at that point. You're at that tipping point. And by them not extending him, they are saying, okay, we're not sure. And there's a really good possibility, unless he plays out of his mind next year, we're going to be paying a whole lot of dead money, and he won't be the quarterback of the Cowboys anymore.
Jerry talked about doing it with less this year. David Hellman, our buddy over at Fox, posted this quote from Jerry Jones 3 years ago, where he said, "The truth is, most anything that I've ever been involved in that ended up being special, I overpaid for every time to the end. Anytime I've tried to get a bargain, I got just that. It was a bargain in a lot of ways and not up to standard." So, Jerry Jones himself not able to keep everything in line with Jerry Jones and the way that he's approaching this Cowboys team that really undermines any confidence you could have had going into this season.
Fresh off the daily Iowan press, marching forward, Caitlin Clark in Iowa onto the Sweet 16 once again, facing 5-seed Colorado, who they actually faced last year in the Sweet 16, and they won to move on. So very curious to see what happens this time around. As expected, they did beat West Virginia, but it wasn't very easy because of West Virginia's defense. In the fourth quarter, Iowa scored 1 field goal. Caitlin Clark bombarded the whole entire time, as she usually is, but hey, she still dropped 32 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and broke yet another record in her historic season. Now over 1,000 points, 1,113 to pass former Washington Huskies star Kelsey Plum for the most points in a D1 season. Anytime Caitlin Clark plays or advances, we have to talk about it. So let's talk about her and then any other game that stood out to you, GoJo.
Yeah, I think last night we kind of got scared, Dad. Part of the thing we always talk about, and the reason I always say you love a clearly defined big bad in a tournament. Everyone knows who the team people are gunning for, and while that's South Carolina in this tournament, for them it's Caitlin Clark as a singular entity. She is the biggest star in this tournament, and so any upset of her would automatically qualify as massive. And when with 5 minutes to go, West Virginia ties this game up, all of a sudden you've got an additional flood of eyeballs and all this attention wondering would they finally be able to slay the giant. And I don't think anyone embodied the frustration or the nerves of this situation more than Caitlin Clark's dad. Did you see Brent Clark in the crowd, Dad, as they panned to him time and time again, looking 100% as stressed as Caitlin Clark's dad should at any given moment in one of her basketball games?
I always love these shots to the parents. As I said, mentioned, watched the wrestling championships, NCAA wrestling championships over the weekend, and they would go to the parents, and dads or moms would be doing the moves with their kid, out on the mat. It's just great to watch the reaction. I've seen the same thing with parents of gymnasts when they're going through their routine. It's just very cool to see. Obviously, parents are so invested into watching their kids, but what a game here. Yeah, up by 10. And then West Virginia, of course, as you mentioned, scores 10 straight to tie it up. We saw a close game with Syracuse and UConn as well. So you started wondering about some of the, the higher seeds and the big blue bloods here of what was going to happen. And if Iowa were to lose on their home court in her last game on that court, that would have been unbelievable. But she pulls through as she normally does. Everybody looking forward to the next round, the Elite Eight, when hopefully we'll get that rematch of Iowa and LSU if they both win their next games, Iowa against Colorado, LSU against UCLA. But it's getting down to the players that we're talking about, right? With Caitlin Clark, with UConn, and what they're doing, and what Gino Auriemma is saying, that is Caitlin Clark the best player, or Paige Beckers, who's on my team, who's gone through some injury issues. We got all the great freshmen still in this. Juju Watkins at USC, Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame, and Madison Booker at Texas. Still, they're all in this as well. So this women's side is really holding not only the teams that we had thought would be there, but the individuals that are helping these teams get there.
I was just going to say, it's setting up perfectly for the entertainment product that is March Madness, because you've got all of the names. We came into this with a very clear and lengthy set of names that you just mentioned as the stars of this sport, and having pretty much all of them still in the tournament at this point. Awesome for what's going forward, because you saw a lot of the margins of victory start to shrink a little bit. Even UConn, that game was a little bit more tightly contested. All these ones got to single digits at certain points. USC and Notre Dame, quite honestly, probably had the biggest margins yesterday when you look at a couple of the top seed lines advancing on to the next round. But yeah, it preserves that going forward, which very excited about there. Selfishly, pumped watching. You mentioned the Lady Irish there, Hannah Hidalgo, part of that great freshman group. And yesterday, man, the trio, Notre Dame, no depth right now. Basically playing with 6.5 players going out there on any given night. Not a deep bench because of all that injury. And it didn't matter. They overwhelmed that Ole Miss team defensively for the majority of that game, sitting in that 2-3 zone. But Hannah Hidalgo, if you haven't watched her play, and I think that's the cool part, Dad, about so many of these players in women's college basketball right now, really different styles all around, right? Juju Watkins, this incredibly smooth, gifted athlete. I mean, what she presents physically as a challenge in addition to all the skills is terrifying. Hannah Hidalgo, much smaller package overall, but like a pit bull. I mean, just out there in your face defensively each and every possession. Even if it's not falling offensively for her, she's going to be all over you from the opening tip to the final echo of the whistle, orchestrating that team in a way of full of maturity beyond her years. Like, she is a legitimate, as a fan of the school, a legitimate joy to watch, because you know this, Dad, one of the things that I think is the universal language for fans, players, coaches, and otherwise is the effort you see, and it screams off the tape with her.
She is a ball of energy. She is non-stop. It is amazing to watch. And you're right, she's a smaller package, shorter, because Juju Watkins, Madison Booker, the other freshmen we talk about, are both over 6 foot. But still, what they mean to their teams is amazing. And not shocking, it's pretty chalky on the women's side. You know, where South Carolina is, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 with them, Notre Dame, Creighton, and Indiana. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 with Texas, Stanford, North Carolina State, Gonzaga. Then over with Iowa, it's actually 1, 2, 3, 5. And then for the USC's region, it's this is the 1, 7, 3, 4. Duke crashing the party there at number 7. So, like I said, we have the matchups and still the teams and the players in this that we have been talking about, and why we talked about the women's tournament going into this tournament had more juice than the men's, though the men's has really stepped up as well. By the way,
and the men's has also been very chalky too. I mean, just the 5th time in NCAA history we've had all 1 and 2 seeds make it to this round. Like, that'll be an interesting conversation in and around the portal, is if that redistribution of talent, who it benefits when it comes to a single elimination tournament. My guess is math inconclusive because there really is nothing consistent or conclusive about a tournament this large that's also single elimination. But there's always that question we've had regardless of sport, Dad, of, hey, does this allow more teams who get a quality guy that leaves maybe one of the big Power 5 schools and goes down a level so you get one of these single bid leagues with a stud that all of a sudden can affect the outcome of these games, or if it consolidates amongst the teams that are already the haves and we see stuff like this a little bit chalkier on the men's side than maybe we're used to moving on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, again, the only double seed North Carolina State, and they take on number 2 Marquette in the Sweet 16. But like I said, I did some quick math, and I believe there's just, unless somebody corrects me, there are 4 crossovers, 4 colleges that are still in it in both the men's and the women's: UConn, Gonzaga, North Carolina State, and Duke. And so the next question people may ask is, have we ever had a men's team and women's team from the same college win it in the same year? And yes, we have. 2 times. Both times we were in Connecticut when it happened, and it was UConn. It happened in 2004 and 2014. The UConn men and women's team both won national championships, and we see the signs all the time when we were driving around UConn, as well you should. But it was always amazing to us. Little old Stores, Connecticut, go off into an exit, and it's its own little area there. I mean, and what the powerhouses that they had. They're the only 2 to do it, and in position to possibly do it again this year, as both men and women's team are in it, one of the 4.
Yeah, it would be much more unlikely on the women's side than maybe it's been in quite some time, considering the uphill battle with some of these other teams you mentioned. But on the men's side, I said it, UConn's going back-to-back. That team looks dominant. They are, in addition to being incredibly physically gifted, they've got one of the quality bigs in this tournament in Donovan Clingan. They are just constant motion on offense. They are so difficult to get your arms around there. But, Dad, don't just limit that celebration to Stores, by the way. Stores, which if you haven't been there, it's a farm town. There is nothing up there. And I say that lovingly as someone that went to school in South Bend, Indiana. Like a lot of these off the beaten path college towns don't have a ton going on there, but Stores is a bunch of cows and then a college pops up around there. It's the state, like Connecticut, and I'm not begrudging this, but Connecticut, we didn't have a lot as a state to wrap our arms around. Shout out to the Hartford Yard Goats, best AA ballpark in America, like 4 years running in minor league baseball. Outside of that, we didn't have a ton of pro teams besides them and the Wolfpack hockey team, and so Connecticut basketball was it. It was a national holiday for the state, and that's why, as one of that state's premier haters of that basketball program, because of my affinity with Notre Dame, when Ruth Riley and the Lady Irish won that championship in 2001, I strode into my elementary school dressed like a whole damn leprechaun, peacocking all over the place, letting them know what time it is, because for the rest of that time, being a Notre Dame basketball fan in Connecticut country, we didn't have a great time. It was not always so fun. So going to be fun to watch them going forward. Even more fun. Hour number 2 of GoJo and Golic coming up next with our buddy Charlotte Wilder stopping by, basking in the glow of her new birthday next. All right. Golic, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato. Excited to talk to our buddy Charlotte Wilder, who's now full-time migrated to Tuesdays. So Wilder Wednesday crowd, we appreciate the legion of loyal fans there. You're just going to have to adjust your dials. It's like daylight savings, but for our show segment. So just think of it that way. We are sorry about it. It was motivated by the farmers. There was nothing we could do. They have a very strong and powerful representation and lobbyists, and they got to us. There's no two ways about that. So in the meantime, to smooth those things over while we wait for Charlotte to get on here with us, Dad, Claudia, we need an update on Starch Madness here. We have the voting open now. We got to the Treat 16 yesterday in this bracket, and we'll get the results from that here in just a second. But I want to open up the voting for today as we have moved on now to this next round. We're going to be looking at the side division of the Treat 16 that's opened up today. And we've got some interesting battles. Again, chalk all around in our tournament. We've talked about that in college basketball this year. We've got the 2-3 matchup. Sonic Tater Tots against the McDonald's Hash Browns. Really, this is like a father-son thing here. I look at Tater Tots as the sons or the daughters of Hash Browns, the smaller, more mobile version of these two squaring off in this round. And then the other matchup, the 1-4 matchup, McDonald's Fries against the Popeyes Biscuits. Big victories for both in the last round. McDonald's Fries maybe the largest margin of victory in the tournament in the 1-8 matchup. So, Dad, early voting for you. What are you taking here?
Well, first, we're finally going to get, when we get to the results from yesterday, we finally had an upset that we'll get to. I don't think the Popeyes biscuit is going to be much competition for the McDonald's Fries. I see them moving on. The tater tots to the hash browns, because it's the same thing, right? If you cut up the hash brown from McDonald's and rolled it into little balls, it would look like tater tots, right? They're basically the same thing. It's just which ones do you like better? I always feel like I'm getting more when I get tater tots because it feels like that's more than just the one kind of formed hash brown you get from McDonald's. That's just me. That's just a me thing. I believe I like the Sonic Tater Tots. I think I am going to vote for them over the McDonald's hash browns, while I will go McDonald's Fries over the Popeyes biscuit.
Senior, I respect you.
I think I am giving votes to McDonald's for both of these at this point, Claudia.
Okay. I just have to quickly, before we talk fries, they're not the same thing. They're wannabe, Senior. Hash browns have a lot more crispiness to them, and tater tots are like broken too much inside, I find. And hash browns are bigger, so I feel like tater tots are GoJo. They're broken inside. They look great on the outside, but there's stuff going on in there. So I have to disagree with you on that one. Hash browns all the way. Go ahead.
The one thing I will say real quickly, Claudia, is while we have our differences of movies that you haven't seen, and we keep talking about that, your breakdown of food, even if we disagree, is top notch.
Thank you.
So big kudos for that.
I love food, so I appreciate that.
Speaking of breakdowns of food, the results from yesterday, and now I have pulled up for the mains bracket here. The double quarter pounder picked up a win over the Crunchwrap Supreme, which pisses me off something serious. And the battle of chicken sandwiches also, we saw the first upset. The 3-seed Chick-fil-A sandwich beat the 2-seed Popeyes chicken sandwich. Again, wasn't my vote, but that's y'all. Democracy reigns, and so now they move on after the Treat 16. So again, voting right now open for the sides that you can check out at GoJo and Golic on Twitter. Help us out, continue to advance the ball here, and we'll see how it winds up. Now, though, we have to unveil our most beloved guest on this show. I think I can say that at this point. Charlotte Wilder, our weekly contributor, joins us now for Wilder Wednesday on Tuesday.
You're gonna make me cry. Are you kidding me? That's so sweet. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was trying to talk earlier. Guys, I was ready to sign on. I was early, and then my computer went on the fritz, and my back was hurting, and I couldn't make the thing work, and I was like, I turned 35 yesterday, and life has just been coming at me real fast. like all of the things that have, I can't use computers now. My back hurts. So thank you for having me. I missed you for those 5 minutes that I couldn't figure out how to talk.
Charlotte, welcome to my world. Your back hurts and you can't figure out technology. You are in my world, except I'm 61 and you're 35. I mean, just a little bit of a gap there.
Yeah, Senior, I just like to think of it as like I'm set up for the rest of it now. Like you get 35 and I'm already 61 at heart, and then the rest is just going to be smooth sailing. Claudia, I have to agree with you on the hash brown take.
Let's go.
I know that's going to be controversial. I don't love tots.
Me either. Too soft.
Wow.
I've maintained for a while that I think tots are slightly overrated. I think they're very good, but a lot of people who try and say they'd pick them over French fries of certain varieties are just ridiculous. And by the way, if I can make a brief aside, I had this yesterday. I need to know, where do you guys all stand on shoestring fries? Because I think they're an abomination. I think anywhere that serves them is doing a disservice to its customers. Yeah. I think fries that you have to eat with a fork like that are ridiculous and childish and do not satisfy one bit. I'm someone that frequented Steak and Shake when I lived in Indiana, and I had to deal with these monstrosities there, and I just can't. Get some ass to your fries or get them the hell out of here. These wisps of wind that you decided to throw in the deep fryer are a joke.
I'm realizing I don't know if I know what shoestring fries are then, if you have to eat them with a fork.
I've never seen that.
Think of a shoestring, and that's what basically what the fry. It's very, very thin. Very thin.
Super
I don't
thin.
eat them with a fork like Mike does. I just pick up a bunch with my hand and shove it in my pie hole I normally do. If we're talking fries, I'm probably the biggest fan of like a waffle type fry that can hold the I'm the fan of any kind of fry that will hold the most dipping sauce, whether it be ketchup or whatever other kind of sauce I want to put on it. The waffle fry by circumference is going to hold the most amount of dipping sauce.
I just, I respect that, but there's something about a perfectly sized fry that's not, I'm Goldilocks when it comes to fries. So I wasn't surprised at all that McDonald's, that it was such an easy win, because you're trying to dethrone, well, not the king, because that's Burger King. You're trying to dethrone the clown.
Well, I will say, Charlotte, we're not alone. Right now, 67% on the hash browns. Sorry, taters. Taters of the world.
I think the McDonald's hash brown is going to have a really good time in this one. Much more beloved menu item that just doesn't get talked about nearly as much now because we've innovated beyond that to some extent. So at GoJo Golic, you guys can weigh in on all of that when you get to there. Charlotte, we were just talking a lot about the NCAA women's tournament right now and what's going on, and the fact that they have had the really good fortune, I think, as we talk about what the momentum has looked like over the last couple of years around this sport, to have all of these star player names that we knew coming into this tournament still preserved going into the Sweet 16 now is a major win for college basketball fans, for TV executives, and everybody alike. So what's been your reaction to what we've seen so far from either of these tournaments, but I think especially the women's tournament that we knew came in with this fanfare?
So I've for the last few years, the women's tournament for me has been where it's at. I stayed up way, way, way too late on Sunday night watching Iowa State Stanford. That game was out of control. I think that was an instance where, to what you're saying, Gojo, of preserving the star power of, everybody's known Stanford. It's Tara Vanderveer, the winningest coach. Cam Brink, like all these faces that we've seen. Cam won a national championship when she was a freshman, right? You watch these people. I'm like, 4 years is a lot longer than you realize when you just keep seeing these people year after year and get attached. And that was a game where I was like, man, I sort of want, Audie Crooks and Emily Ryan was balling out. And I was like, I really want Iowa State to win. But at the same time, there is something about having all of those major players going into a Sweet 16 that's still really exciting. So I've been pretty glued to it. I think tuning into the men's tournament has been, I'm getting to know guys, which is fun. I host an NBA show. I'm gonna be seeing some of them at the draft. Right. So that's what I sort of watch for. I have also become very fond of Jared McCain, the guy on Duke, with the TikToks. Have you talked about him yet?
He's interesting.
Doesn't he have like 2 million
seen his
TikToks or
TikToks.
something?
He
It's like got 2 million followers, doesn't he?
You know, I don't know the exact number, Senior, but I know him because last night I was looking at this guy and there's this song. I felt really old then too, because Jared McCain, he's in the locker room and everyone also was clowning on him a little bit because they were like, this guy's known for TikTok. But then he went out and he had over 30 points, one of only 3 Duke players to do that, including Zion Williamson and Kyrie Irving. So they were like, whoa, the TikTok kid can actually ball. And there's this video of him, you guys, in the locker room. And he's holding his phone like this, as one does when you're making a TikTok. And he's singing this song. And he goes, it's 2 days into college and I'm 3 lectures behind. And I was like, what is happening? And then he keeps going and he's singing about this guy named Colin. And I was like, what is happening? And it turns out that this is a TikTok trend. This Irish girl who's in college wrote this song. It has 5.3 million likes. It blew up, but it is so TikTok niche that I'm looking at this thing being like, why did he make up this song? And why is he singing it in an Irish accent? And then he starts duetting this girl. And he's brought this to an American audience. So I think from the men's side of the tournament, I'm very grateful because they're teaching me what the youth are up to, especially in Ireland, you guys.
This is fascinating to me on a number of levels, Charlotte, mostly because TikTok's a blind spot for me. Like, I exist in that space in a way that's a lot less comfortable than me on Twitter or Instagram or any of these other social media that came up when I was in college. But, Dad, we've talked a lot about the ability to get to know modern players in sports and how we don't feel like, to Charlotte's point, we're being introduced, a lot of us, to the players on the men's side of this tournament, the general sports audience that's not diehard college fans. But I do wonder if that's true for every audience group, because the one thing we've seen is Jared McCain's not alone in being a high-profile young player coming into these sports, especially basketball, that's got a massive online following where a lot of these guys that we've seen come up are more well-known for what they're doing on social media, do come in with all this cachet. It's why the NIL conversation was interesting off the jump. But I do wonder if in every sport's ever-present quest to try and connect with younger fans is maybe they're doing a better job of this than we even know of.
So, I mean, for my generation, listen, when I say I'm throwing in the towel, it's just I'm accepting. I'm accepting what we see, okay?
When I say I'm like, giving up, I mean...
I tried to fight for years over at ESPN during my time there. Every year, the baseball all-star game, there has to be a player on every team represented. I tried to yell and scream about that. But if they don't deserve to be there, you're taking it away from somebody else. Finally, I just threw my hands up and I said, screw it. Okay, fine. That's what you guys want to do. At the end of the day, what do I care? You know, it doesn't affect me. And I'm still gang with the whole TikTok thing, okay? Somebody gets on there and they dance for 10 seconds and it has 2 million views. I sit there and look at it and I'm like, what the hell are we doing? What are we doing? Why does this get so many views? What is so special about singing a song, you know, and getting 5 million views? I personally don't understand it. I don't scroll through, get lost in the timeline of watching TikTok. I don't even have it to do it. That's part of me, again, where I'm saying I'm just throwing my hands up and saying, this is what this generation does. That's cool. I get it. But I'm not going to sit here and say I understand it.
So I'm going to be honest. I don't understand it either. I was looking at that Irish girl's song and I was like, oh, it's very catchy. And then I was like, but why does it have 5.3 million? Like, why did this blow up? And then I'm like, I can't stop singing it. I can't stop going back to watch it. I can't and then I'm like, maybe I do understand. Maybe I'm a simple creature and there are certain things that when you hit that, but you know, I was thinking the same thing, Gojo, about, you know, oh my God, these guys are, these people, these athletes are introducing themselves to us. I was laughing because I was like, in a few years, we're gonna have a bunch of TikTok stars in the NBA. And like, that's going to be how it is. And I think that is a major, major shift from how athletes have represented themselves in the past. And we've seen it for a few years now, but it feels like this is the first year where it's not like totally weird. It's not like, how dare this kid dance? It's like, oh, okay, Jared McCain also is good at basketball.
I agree.
Well,
the reason I have to say quickly, because I made that face. That wasn't at what Charlotte was saying. Just the thought, though, of NBA players going to half court and taking TikToks before the game makes me want to gouge my eyes out. Because, Senior, I'm with you. I get the songs that are catchy, and if you have a talented voice, power to you. But the kids that go on there, the 14-year-olds that go on there and dance for 2 seconds or do something really dumb and make millions of dollars off it grinds my gears, because we're all out here working hard and they're really not doing much on TikTok and making so much money for it. But going back to the NBA players, that's the only thing. It's just a cringe moment if TikTok does get too much involved in the game.
Because it's new, though, and I think the funny part about listening to all of this is what's at the core of this is the most freeing concept that there is. And Charlotte, you wrote very beautifully on your Substack, The Wilder Things, about turning 35 and all these different things that come with it and the feelings associated with it. And the one thing that I have found that I think I've enjoyed the most about aging is the realization and the freeing release of saying, I understand this isn't for me. I am not the intended audience for this. I am not who this is supposed to appeal to. And once you let that wash over to you with all this stuff, then you can start to look at it behind the waterfall and kind of see, oh, this is just an extension of everything that we've seen of athlete-owned media and player podcasts all of a sudden just going down to the more bite-sized level that this next generation has started to consume on the platform that's most germane to them. This is where they get down. Dad, I remember when you were doing Mike and Mike still, and Greeny, whose kids were, a decade younger than us, hearing him talk about, the only way they communicate with each other is on Snapchat. And that was so mind-blowing to me as someone much older who didn't understand how they would do that and function and be able to have any semblance of peace. And now I just look and go, that's not for me to understand. That's not for me to understand because it's not the way that I came up here.
So it's even beyond you guys. You 34, 35-year-olds.
Yeah, I think something that's interesting about the branding of millennials is that people kept us young for a lot longer than other generations. Like, I think because millennials was sort of the first tech generation, like the first generation that grew up with some semblance of computers in middle school, say, I think that there's this idea that we are just young people who will always understand what the youth are up to. And the truth is that we're like 35 looking at TikTok being like, these kids are 15, 20 years younger than I am. I don't really get it. I respect it because I think, Claudia, I think there's actually a little more going on than just the dance. I think actually a lot of times it's a real skill to make something that catchy, that's that short, that just hits in some way. And I'm also, Gojo, I'm with you. I'm cool knowing that I'm just not going to be able to do it. Like I try to make TikTok sometimes and I'm just like, I don't think this is for me. I'm going to keep writing. And that's like the most ancient thing you can do at this point.
Yeah.
I will say quickly, Charlotte, if anybody hasn't, read her article about turning 35. I don't understand a lot about the way Substack, I don't know what the hell all that is, but all I know is I got your article and I found it and I read it, and it was incredible of how you were the captain of your own ship and it went from a fiberglass boat to a wooden boat. And you're still steering the ship, but others have helped you get on course to where you're going. It was a great article. It's a really great article that all of a sudden you were this sailor. It was really great.
Senior, we're going to read a bit of it later, just so everyone knows. You will hear some of the articles.
Oh, good.
I got you.
Okay.
And we have a gift for Charlotte that we are going to present her later as well in that regard. So plenty to look forward to there. But I do enjoy so much that we've stumbled into a segment where I can make the analogy that Substack is to my dad as TikTok is to me in terms of technology that has finally shown us the door. And for Charlotte and I, Charlotte, you brought up an incredible point, which is we came up in this industry as the young people. We were here when I was on went with Dad and Trey Wingo on the morning show. I was there to be the conduit to youth and all the things that are coming up and the new trends that are happening. And now I'm on the other side of that, and we got to figure out, all right, what else do we bring to the table besides being the young one at the party who can explain new trends to old people around the industry?
Too real. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Everybody is loving JJ McCarthy, and that's not just coming from me. We actually have numbers to back it up. Take a look at how these odds have dropped. They were at 18-1 for him to go number 2 overall. They have come down to 4-1. And of course, this is after Jim Harbaugh came out saying he's the best quarterback in the draft. Of course, not biased at all there. Saying that other coaches and GMs were loving what he did at Pro Day. Yesterday, Tom Pelissero had this to say about where McCarthy could land on April 25th.
Really interesting because everybody's always trying to figure out, especially at the top of the draft, what the other teams are doing. When I've had conversations here with executives for other teams who know Adam Peters well, know the situation well, the most popular answer for what they do at number 2 is JJ McCarthy. So a lot of drama still to come.
Just like Mac Jones, the last time Adam Peters had this situation.
So, JJ McCarthy possibly going to Washington. GoJo, the question that I have is this too much hype? Is this sort of setting him up for failure, JJ McCarthy?
At this point, like, listen, if you're JJ McCarthy, you're pumped about this because you want to make as much money going into the NFL as possible because nothing's guaranteed. And I'm sure he has a ton of belief in his ability to go out here and execute this. But yeah, it is absolutely vaunting him into conversations that we didn't think he would be a part of at this point in time. It's wild to see the jump that's made, Dad, for, and as you guys know, I love a little bit of quantum physics mixed into the conversation. Schrodinger's quarterback here. This guy could be anything at this point based on the potential that's the selling point for a player we just didn't have to see do as much as these other quarterbacks in college. And so now we've got this situation where, yeah, people are kind of running wild with this. I don't think he's going to be up at 2, Dad, but I think today we have found ourselves firmly in the crosshairs of silly season when it comes to the quarterback and these headlines that are going to start to pop up.
Oh, and listen, this is lying season. I don't believe what anybody is saying. For forever, it had been Drake May number 2. Now it's Jaden Daniels in a lot of people's eyes. I'm still always amazed the jump that J.J. McCarthy is making since he last put pads on. That's what always gets me. I mean, you got a ton of film on this guy already and a ton of breakdown already. So the only difference, and if you sit there and you start counting combine garbage and pro day garbage, I got nothing for you. But if you're going to sit there and say, in sitting down with him, meeting him, putting him at the board, going over film with him, if that has changed your mind, then okay, at least it's something football-wise that I've seen and not him throwing in shorts and a T-shirt where you all of a sudden say, oh my God, I can't believe what he's doing. But we're at the position as well, Charlotte. This is an overvalued position where we think maybe 2 would grade as first-round quarterbacks. We're going to get 5 in the first round, and sorry, fans of those 5 teams, 2 or 3 of those are going to be a bust.
Yeah.
It's going to be your team's fault.
It's going to be your team. Yeah, it's definitely going to be your team. I mean, it's fascinating to me. I feel like this is what happened with Zach Wilson in 2021, where it was sort of like, okay, here's this kid who, like, we don't really have a ton on. He was, like, good, I guess, at BYU, but I would, like, when things started to come out that he might get taken at 2, I was like, are we sure? And now it's like, yeah, maybe we weren't. Maybe we shouldn't have done that. And I think with J.J. McCarthy, it's fascinating because that Michigan team, like, pretty late into the season, you know, they were putting up pictures of Blake Corum as the main attraction for that. Like, people didn't know JJ McCarthy's name, I would say, nationally until that national title game. I think that there is, I mean, we saw this happen, I guess, Mac Jones as well. I think it's also like when there's a white quarterback who seems like he's a nice guy, I think teams are sort of like, well, what if we give it a shot? You know, he'll be fun to have when we go golfing. Like, and that's doing a real disservice to JJ McCarthy. He won a national championship, but I do think that there is a weird way between the end of the college football season and the draft where people, as you said, silly season, but also like convincing yourself season. And also they're all lying. So like, we just won't know until this happens.
I think part of the core of all of this is the hubris of NFL coaches, front offices, and team personnel to always believe they can create and they can get credit for. That's what they're all seeking. And with J.J. McCarthy, you've got, I think, this incredible ball of ability that, Dad, to one of the points you talked about, we don't have as much film of J.J. McCarthy doing the drop back stuff and doing a lot of the quarterbacking in certain situations as we do of these other guys, because that offense was largely predicated, as Charlotte pointed out, on them running the ball, on them handing it off behind a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line to a Heisman Trophy candidate running back from 2 years ago that didn't put enough or as much on his plate. And so when you've got, hey, guy with a live arm and a bunch of great physical ability who played on a really good team and made some big throws when it mattered and has all this championship stuff, and we can call him a winner and do all of that, if you're an NFL team that loves the idea of being able to mold someone because you think you're better at that than everybody else, he's a really enticing prospect in that way.
So, I mean, if J.J. McCarthy truly goes second, this has to be a move based on Washington. It better be about them meeting with May, meeting with Daniels, and meeting with J.J. McCarthy and just feeling all the things associated with it, be it in the classroom, the film room, or whatever, that J.J. McCarthy comes out on top, because it can't be on tape. Because if they're just now going, oh my God, look at him on tape, wow, he plays really well, then that's on them. for not doing their due diligence already on every quarterback out there if you were going to choose a quarterback. So to me, and Claudia, I mean, haven't the odds changed significantly for J.J. McCarthy going number 2 now? I mean, it's unbelievable.
That big of a drop. I mean, we see this, and that's the issue with these markets, which is why I tell people to be cautious when you are betting it. This is all predicated off what people are hearing. So it's not weird timing. Like, it is directly coincided with what Harbaugh was saying about it, and the fact that GMs, I think the big key there was not just a former head coach talking about his former quarterback, but it was him saying at the pro day, GMs and coaches loved him, and other coaches came out too and said he was great. He should be a top 3 quarterback. So yeah, but the drop from 18-1 to 4-1 is wild, because all the movement has been between Daniels and Drake May. Daniels is the favorite at -170, but May at one point was the favorite as well. So now throwing J.J. McCarthy into the mix is going to shake things up. But technically, you could say you got a great number on him before the move. I still don't know if he's really going to go number 2, though. Of course, no one does.
I don't either. And I think coming off yesterday, there's a lot of information to take into account of that, not the least of which, and I hate that I've taken this long to mention it, what the New York Giants said yesterday to me is the most important development that's come out of the owners' meeting so far. That John Mara and company came out and said, yeah, we're sitting at 6, and I've told our staff, if we like a quarterback enough to either take one at 6 or go up to get them if need be, then they've got the green light to do so. Like, the Giants are a massive swing state in this draft, and when you look at the teams sitting above them, and the Patriots, Charlotte, who have been linked to trading down or potentially trading that pick, and the Arizona Cardinals and Los Angeles Chargers, who already have their quarterbacks, that is manna from heaven to them in a time where, do I think the Giants are totally serious? No, not totally. I think part of this is playing the game of creating some doubt of the teams below, teams like Las Vegas, teams like the Broncos, teams like the Vikings who need quarterbacks, to say, hey, if you want one of these guys, you're going to at least have to come up past 6, because we might be lurking here to take somebody and you don't know. And everybody now has to think, well, in the corner in the back of their mind, hey, the Giants might be players in this, and we have to account for that.
Yeah, I think it's also the Giants are the perfect team to do this, because you look at them and you're like, yeah, I could see them taking quarterback. Like, Daniel Jones hasn't been what they want him to be. You could also say, well, but maybe he'll be healthy this year and there's a chance, so maybe they won't. Like, it is the perfect spot to play mind games. And I also think one more thing on the JJ McCarthy stuff, I think sometimes not having as much information on someone makes them the most enticing draft prospect. I think that you don't have enough of you might not have enough of what they do right. You don't have enough of what they do wrong for a fan base to be really, really mad at you. And I could also see the Giants being a little silly and going and trying to get JJ McCarthy, which I do not think is the right person to swap out with Daniel Jones. Mike.
Charlotte, the irony of what you said being best illustrated by the last draft, where we had a high-end North Carolina quarterback prospect in Mitch Trubisky versus, forget his off-field accusations at the time, Deshaun Watson's evaluation as a college quarterback. Comparatively way more film, a lot of good stuff, but compared to the potential of Mitch Trubisky, that gave way.
back here on GoJo and Golic with our girl Charlotte Wilder, who turned 35 yesterday. Woo! Make sure you wish her a happy birthday if you didn't already. And while you're at it, go check out what she just wrote on her Substack, The Wilder Things. It's pretty awesome. A lot of good comparisons in there. We have a little excerpt from it. It says, quote, "On the eve of 35, I am standing at the helm of a sturdy wooden schooner. The fiberglass morphed into wood because the boat's back started hurting when she hit 33. I'm wearing one of those black wide-brimmed captain hats with feathers in it and a velvet double-breasted coat fastened with gold buttons. I don't care if I look ridiculous." End quote. And so we took that and did what any other media company would do, Charlotte.
No.
We made it come to life.
Yep.
And I have to say, it's quite beautiful.
Wait, this is incredible. This
Happy
is
birthday.
incredible. Oh my God, this is the best present.
If there was ever a reason to log on and follow at GoJo and Golic on Twitter or to watch on YouTube to see this beautiful picture of Captain Charlotte, today would be the day. And we note Charlotte's affinity for large transportation objects, whether that be planes, whether that be trains, whether that be automobiles, or especially ships. So happy belated birthday, Charlotte, from our staff to yours.
Oh my God, thank you guys so much. I look pretty cool in that picture.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Like, thank you so much to whoever made that. You made me look less ridiculous than I had in my head. Damn, well, I sort of want that outfit. Anyway.
That
Yeah,
should be a
that's
new pro pick. That looks like a new pro pick situation to me.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal. You know, it's funny hearing the thing that I wrote read back to me, because I'm like, that is a weird thing to write. But
It was awesome.
Thank you so much. I think I feel I made that analogy because to me the biggest thing about getting older has been it hit me as I was thinking about it. I tried to write that piece for like a week. I think I had like 13 different drafts. I could not get it right. You know, it's also sort of scary to be earnest on the internet, I think, especially in 2024. So I was like, we got to really strike this balance. But when I thought about it, I was like, in my 20s, I just felt like very, I didn't realize that I was the one who decided like what I did in some ways. And especially trying to, in this industry, I was like, I really want people to like me, because like, if they don't like me, then they won't give me more opportunities and blah, blah, blah. And then I really did realize it was like I was on a boat and I was the captain of it, but like I just didn't realize. And then getting older has been being like, wait a second, I think I can choose where I go. And of course, you know, they're outside forces. You get buffeted around and you can't ever really stop and blah, blah, blah. But it was that's what that analogy was born of. So thank you for bringing it to life so beautifully.
I was, when I read it, and again, I thought it was great. What I'm going to say is not, I don't mean it as a negative, but it sounds like I read that article and you're 35 going on 60. But I saw that in like my kids. I saw that in like Jake and especially Sydney. Mike has lived a life of FOMO. So Mike rarely goes to bed early. He thinks he's missing out on something. So he kind of goes out and he does stuff. Like Jake and Sydney in their 20s, mid-20s to later 20s, were like, you know what really feels good? Going to bed at 8 o'clock. There's something about it. And then, you know, they're married and they also each have kids, so that adds to it. But you know, the late 20s and early 30s, they were like, boy, how quickly we go out of the college years of being able to back-to-back, you know, drunk nights and the hangover doesn't affect you to, oh my God, you know, I'm not going out anymore. That's when I read that, Charlotte. I finished reading. I thought, that's a great article. But I said, Charlotte, you're only 35. I don't remember 35, let alone to write about it the way you did. It was so long ago, but the way you wrote it about your back hurting and the fiberglass going to wood. And I'm like, Charlotte, you're not old. You're not old like me, who's a little older.
I know. And I think I tried to write, you know, like, who knows how I'll feel in 10 years and 20 years. Like, I know things could get way worse than they are right now. I know everything could fall apart. I think my point was more about, also I've been in a lot of therapy, so that probably has something to do with it, of like learning how to, you know, shorten the time I mean, lengthen the time between when I feel an emotion and when I react to it. I think that's really what a lot of this is about, where it's like, things don't get easier. Things actually probably get harder a lot of the time, but it's sort of having more tools to know how to deal with that. I also think that I've always been like both 12 years old and like 85 at the same time. And so as I get closer to that midpoint where the averages even out, I think I feel a little bit more like myself. I'm just like, well, here we are, and this is what's happening. And I match that now.
Well, I think it's all a matter of perspective. Like, obviously, Dad, the things that we say are going to sound ridiculous to you because you've lived them 20 times over now and had that vantage point so far away that, like you said, you don't even remember it. You have a very different vantage point now, but all we can control is that. This whole conversation does go back to something I think about a lot with the athletes that we cover. Like Charlotte mentioned, you are simultaneously a child playing the children's game. We cover it so we get some of that same feeling, but you're also handed a king's ransom and expected to be the most important person and often the face of this billion-dollar entity that now has the happiness and the job. Forget the happiness of millions of people watching, but the jobs of the people inside the building on the line constantly. And I think about how often we see these tales of athletes where it's too much too soon or failure pops up early on because it's too many plates to spin for someone that does not have that sense of self that comes with the years that Charlotte just described there, where that should happen more often than not. The fact that we get a Patrick Mahomes who by 28 already seems so capable of handling this multi-billion-dollar industry that is the NFL, and Dad doing it as deftly as he has. I mean, again, you watch this now as a 61-year-old man, and I'd be curious how you feel because I watch it as a 35-year-old who my peers age-wise are now retiring after long, fruitful sports careers to go on to the rest of their lives. But I look at them and I know how I feel now, and then I look at their 21-year-old counterparts coming in, and I'm in awe of how they're able to pull any of this off.
Well, I think just like positions like quarterbacks, because quarterback position now we go to more 7-on-7 in high school, traveling around the country, doing that. How the position has grown. I think players overall, athletes overall, young great athletes who end up getting a lot of money are more prepared, right? Now, there's more distractions as well, way more distractions than when I was coming up and made comparatively good money to what the rest of the country makes. But now it's expanded to making generational money, which is incredible. But I think these athletes, because of the way they grow up and the era they're growing up, are more prepared for it. Doesn't mean they handle it better all the time, but I think they have more information now, Charlotte, to handle these situations better because they're out there a little more from growing up and having the spotlight on them at such an early age and knowing the money that comes along with it. And I'll continue to say, while they don't always handle it the best, they should be better prepared for it.
I do think that, yes, I also think, GoJo, to your point, the athlete situation we find ourselves in now with that kind of pressure and that kind of money, I think it's probably the best encapsulation of this sort of fetishization of youth. Because I think like part of my big, like the thing that scared me to death was that when I was 25, when I was turning 30, that I was going to age out of being anything. I didn't make 30 under 30 and I was like, oh my God, I'm washed, and now that's so embarrassing to even say out loud. But we put that on these 20-year-old kids. And like, I do think there can be a window for people and, maybe I'm about to age out and I don't know it, but like, I think that I feel more confident than I think sometimes maybe it's like, let's keep giving people a chance as they get older. And the problem with sports is you can't do that because it's your body. So it's this really interesting microcosm of the whole culture that we see in sports.
Yeah, it is. There's a clock put on everyone the minute you start playing so many of these sports, and it's it's been memed. We've talked about it. Look, he is brave out there, 33 years old, decrepit by league standards, still managing to exist. So fascinating stuff. Coming up next, let's talk about the most powerful drug on earth, being 26. All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you off into the day. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us that 5-star rating. And check us out here live when you can, Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKings Network. You can also catch the best of GoJo and Golic wherever you hear VSiN on the radio from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. And make sure you check out Oddball, featuring Charlotte Wilder and Amin El Hassan, another DraftKings Network podcast and show every day but Monday, wherever you get your podcast or right here on DKN. If you miss any of this show, our friend Charlotte Wilder or anything else, make sure you check us out wherever you get your podcast, as well as available right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third, and start off with this. This headline yesterday made me chuckle, as we've talked a lot about age on this show. Sydney Sweeney, in an article published by the Daily Mail Online, says that she only needs 2 hours of sleep at night and has never tried coffee, instead just drinking water. She also detailed her exercise, diet, and beauty secrets, all of which, in my mind, guys, boil down to it is great to be 26 years old, because all of this stuff is viable then. As someone, I did a 4 to 6 a.m. East Coast morning radio show when I was like 26 to 28. And I remember my sleep habits were absolute hell. I would take a nap before the show. I would take a little nap after the show, and it didn't amount to very much sleep. And I always told myself, I can probably get away with this until I'm 30 years old. And I was right. And so Charlotte, Dad, Claudia, I think a lot of this just boils down to being young rocks, and your body is incredibly resilient until it's not.
Also, though, you got to be built like that. I have always needed a good 9 hours, and I don't often get it. And then by the end of the week, I am just like a little rag doll. So I think Sydney Sweeney, not only is she very, very smart, she is very, very pretty, and she is very, very lucky because she has a lot of time to use those traits to her advantage, because she just doesn't need to sleep that much. Listen, maybe I'd be a movie star if I didn't need so much sleep. That's all I'm saying.
And also, Charlotte, I totally agree with you. GoJo, I disagree with you because I'm a year older than her. And I don't know what she's talking about. I don't know what kind of work she's doing on 2 hours of sleep. And if I try to come in here, wake up at 4 a.m. after 2 hours of sleep, goodbye, I would lose my job in 2 seconds. So I'm sorry. But, I don't know if she's lying or not, but 2 hours is wild.
Everybody deal. Now, I don't know who this is. I don't know Sydney Sweeney. I don't know. I know Euphoria I have not seen. So one of the few things I have not seen.
The one show.
So the one show that I have not seen. Hey, all I got to say is more power to her. And she's so much better off not drinking coffee. I mean, I had 3 cups before our show even starts, and I know it's not that great for me. So if you can live on water, kudos to you from a health standpoint. And we all know at some point this is going to end. What I want to know is if you truly are only getting about 2 hours of sleep every night, what are you filling your time with?
Right.
That is a lot of extra
producing
time.
movies, Senior. She's a busy lady. She's making a lot of money. Is what she's doing in that
Charlotte takeaway.
Charlotte, no, she's not. I mean, there is no way she is working for 22 hours a day, in doing this. She may not need the sleep. So I want the date marked for her when this ends. When all of a sudden she gets 2 hours of sleep and she's like, oh my God, I can't function anymore on that. I need more sleep.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of those things that, to everyone's point, is probably very embellished. Like, she's probably gone with very little sleep a few times here and does probably more frequently than most people do, and that just can become the whole personality now. So we won't let the truth get in the way of a good story. We'll just, like Dad said, bookmark this one and come back to it in a few years and see how well this has aged overall, but wish her well in those endeavors. Guys, let's get to that. Claudia, we have talked about our hero, NC State star DJ Burns, who apparently contains multitudes in addition to being a thick king and dominant basketball player.
Yeah, he's like, who needs NIL? I have my own vending machines, which is sort of awesome. Apparently, he has 2 vending machines to make some side money. He said this on Pardon My Take on Monday. I tried looking up to see where the vending machines are. I did not find anything, so if somebody out there finds it, let us know at GoJo and Golic. But I mean, makes sense. Kind of cool, right, Charlotte? Like this is creative, I think.
Yeah, and he also was like, I want to be more than just an athlete. I want to diversify. And I was like, Oh my God, if someone had said to me when I was 18 or 19 and been like, listen, vending machines, I would be a lot better off. Retirement would be looking a little more possible than it looks for me now. So I'm going to need some business lessons from DJ Burns and maybe a little hookup into the vending machine business. Sounds awesome.
I love that he got plugged into this by his trainer. Yeah, so Dad, he got plugged into this by a guy that he trained with, who all of a sudden was the conduit of putting him on this, right?
Yeah, it's a guy who played at Auburn, and he's from Charlotte, and they used to train together. So that's who got him hooked up on this. But this is awesome. With all the NIL money going around and stuff in different ways, people are making money, and then to do this side hustle as well. I love seeing the entrepreneurial things that these younger players do, again, because they're in the era where they can do this, where, it used to be blinders on, right? And I think coaches still would rather have blinders on their players of doing nothing but their sport all the time. Keep your head down and do it. When, these young men and women are branching out, and able to make some money here or there. So good on them. As long as they can keep doing their sport and doing their thing, more power to them to be that versatile.
We always hear people give you advice to keep the main thing the main thing. When you get buckets, you can do whatever you want because they need you more than you need them at that point. And so DJ Burns is out here getting buckets for NC State, and so this man can go collect cash from his vending machine. He said he doesn't actually eat the food from his vending machine, which is the part that sucks because I always think the best part of owning anything that serves food would be the ability to go in and get it whenever I want. I also say this with a little bit of experience because one of the coolest parts of growing up with Dad at the height of Mike and Mike when all the advertising deals are coming in is at one point we ended up with a soda vending machine in our basement, like a full industrial size, buttons and everything, stocked with sodas vending machine in our basement. And let me tell you, there are few things that make you cooler in high school than being the kid with the vending machine in his basement.
Forget about it. I would have lived in your basement. If I were your friend, any excuse, I'd be like, I need help with my math homework. And then I'd come over and get a Sprite. That's awesome, Gojo.
Yeah. That is sweet.
Some of Mike and Jake's friends were a little mad that I overcharged, they thought, for a soda when it was $1.50. But back in
were
those
you
days,
charging? Were you charging for these?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize.
No, I
thought it was just
charged.
Oh
No.
We totally believe that. I totally fell for that.
I could see it.
No,
I could see
was not
Senior being like,
charging.
you need to learn the value of $1.50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
true.
Let me
No
just
free
say, I
lunches
wasn't
or
charging
free
as far as
sodas.
you guys know.
Exactly. At least it was under the table at that point. It was honorable business done in the Golic family basement. Let's move on to the third here. I will be curious if anyone even knew what was going on in this headline as we had a breakup around the world of sports, Claudia.
Yeah, Odell Beckham Jr. and Kim Kardashian apparently were dating for 6 months. I didn't know this was a thing, and I feel like this is a couple we would have known about, but apparently they broke up, and apparently it's because Kim Kardashian mentioned having a baby with him. She's like, you're good looking, you're athletic, maybe I should have a 5th child, and maybe it should be yours, and apparently he dipped out. That's us just guessing off of what somebody said, but I could see this being a conversation. Could you not, Senior? Come on, Kim Kardashian.
Listen, nothing shocks me in that world. As a former reader of all the rag magazines out there, just loving reading all the gossip and innuendo, I read that stuff on the plane all the time when I was going to do my games way back in the day. Now it's Netflix and all the different shows that I watch. So I watch trash instead of reading trash. But this is hilarious. She was up for having a 5th child with him. I mean, what? I just love all the stuff. They didn't arrive together, but there was a lot of touching going on. They were right near each other the entire time. I just love the explanation of two people I never knew that were dating have now broken up. Really breaks my heart.
I'm going to be honest. I did know they were dating, or that it was rumored they were dating, because I still read every single piece. I clicked the links on E!News' Instagram link in bio. So that's a little bit about me. Not the worst idea. Have a kid with an athlete, but they don't really need that sort of ticket. So Gojo.
A legit reminder that Odell Beckham Jr. is actual famous and not just football famous. We hope that you agree and feel the same about us. Download, subscribe, rate, and review us and Oddball with Charlotte Wilder and Amin El Hassan. Thanks, and talk to you tomorrow.